Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm not very sure what time is it at your side. I'm Daniela Sangiorgi from Politecnico di Milano, Department of Design at Politecnico di Milano. I am facilitating this panel. And the title is Multiple Service Design Identities and Roles. I'm doing with some colleagues that will introduce themselves very, very soon. The aim of this session, as you will see, clicking on the link that will be provided in the chat, is to explore how service design is developing in terms of professional identities and roles. We would like to see some differences across countries. There are some countries where service design is more established, some countries where it's emerging. We are interested also in some recent phenomena that has been creating specific forms of accreditations. And then we would like to see what are the consequences in terms of education or service design practice. We are going to present around these four topics following this board. And each of us will give a short introduction to the topic to then let you ask questions through the chat board or to the chat in the Zoom meeting, or you can raise your hands and we'll give you the possibility to talk and ask questions or bring your contribution. You can also write directly on this post-it that you can move on the boards and leave your comment, your question, your materials. So I would like to ask the panel member to very briefly introduce themselves. So I start with JJ.
Okay, hello everyone, very nice to meet you. I'm from National University of Singapore, teaching and researching about service design, human-centered design, and I'm also leading the Service Design Lab Singapore, doing both research and the collaborative industry project with governmental organizations and companies here to help them nurture their service design capabilities. And I'm currently exploring also the boundaries or the new areas of service design being combined with the emerging technologies. Thank you.
Shera.
Hi everyone, good morning and good evening. I'm the assistant professor in Polyo here, home, and I'm the facilitating service design and the development service design programs in Polyo, and I had the industry experience along with the academic experience. So yeah, welcome today.
You?
Okay, hi everyone, nice to meet you through this panel discussion. I'm a Assistant Professor of Department of Design at Seoul National University of Science and Technology in South Korea. And since my PhD in service design, I have been focusing on relating the design perspective and approach for service design to multidisciplinary service research and theory and discussion. Especially in this panel discussion, I'm very interested in exploring how evolving service design conceptualizations could affect the role of designers and the nature of design practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan.
Right, I'm Stefan Holmlid. I'm a professor of design at Linköping University in Sweden. I guess that's it.
Okay. And we should have had Lia Patricia as well from the University of Porto, but given the time frame, I think it's a bit difficult for everyone to join. So I think I will move straight away. Hope you can, I don't see anyone in the board, but you should have the link in the chat. You can come with a password and access the board and navigate through it, leave comments. As you see, we set 18 minutes for each of the board. And I will start with the first one. The first one, we share very briefly a research that we've been doing with Stefan and Lia on service design identities and roles. And we did this by interviewing 9 service designers between Italy, Portugal, and Sweden. And here you can find a very short table where summarizing the kind of profiles. And based on this, we made reflections on how they develop particular service design identities, what were their individual identity life trajectories, and their idea about the service design future. So I let Stefan to talk through this quickly.
Yes, and we were seeing there were two larger kind of sets of ideas about identity and identity development, both individual identities and collective identities. So both the way that they were thinking about themselves and their way of developing identity as service designers, but also the way that they then saw or how the more community-based way of thinking about a collective identity either developed or hindered them from maybe being able to take on that individual trajectory. And here are three kind of, let's call it, it's not deep dives, right? But it's three examples of things that we saw in this interview study, and it has to do with the individual identity, life trajectories. So the way that they themselves as individuals, as persons, as how they saw that they would like to make their role develop depending on what they thought was important and what they want to become and what they saw happened in the organizations where they were. So some of this was, of course, partly depending on the way that they experienced their development possibilities within the organizations, but also and mostly depending on what they wanted to become and wanted to do. So very personally driven. And then when we zoomed out a little bit, we could see that there were a bit of role identities being developed. And here they're like in the coming chapter that we're writing, they're formulated in a from to kind of format. And here, so for example, going from working with service concepts to implementation and measurement, and that then means that they see both that service concepts is something that you can do and it forms your role and your identity, but it can also be all the way over, so to speak, to implementation and measurement. So that has kind of an identity or a role identity developed through relating to the kind of processes that they usually end up in. And we have a couple of those that we could identify. For example, and the second from last there, from an operational focus, that is working a lot with the design techniques, design methods, design tools, or going over to playing a more strategic role and developing more long-term visions, for example. Then what we did at the end, we were looking at the what does this mean when we looked both what they were thinking and also more specifically what they were thinking, but also what we were hearing them talking about. We were looking at and trying to figure out whether there were more specific futures for service design. Maybe that we see, as in other design fields, maybe we will see more specific roles developing, such as a more technical service design role, maybe more of a service design leadership role, speculative service design, and all these may be potential roles or maybe job descriptions even for a future where service design would be not just one role, not one identity, but multiple identities. So this is the a quick summary of that interview study. And over to you again, Daniela.
Yes, so now I would like to open up 10 minutes to see if there are any comments on your side in terms of which kind of service design professional identity and role do you know, did you experience, did you study, or have you documented, or which kind of future do you see in the roles that service design can play in different kinds of organizations? So you can write in the chat some comments, or you can again join this board, and I saw a few people entering, and use one of these post-it to leave your comment. So we are, we see if there is anyone. You can also raise your hands with the Zoom meeting, and we can give you the possibility to talk.
while we are waiting for the responses from the audience, may I
Yes, sure.
ask a question? Yeah, thanks, Stefan and Daniela. Stefan, just simple question. Stefan, could you perhaps unpack what you mean by vertical service design here? I'm curious to know better.
Vertical service design. So
Yeah.
and we were, I mean, as always, you try to figure out good names for things, right? Which is not always obviously easy. And I'll just
I can jump in. So
yeah, do that. I was trying to find the exact wording we had, but
yes,
you can explain it.
Mainly there were someone that were suggesting the need for a more generalist service designer. So again, maintaining this idea that service design has more kind of transversal role, but not necessarily a specific technical contribution, while others says it would be better that service design can find a more vertical position, just focusing on research, just focusing on the technical UX design, mixed service design, or other specific areas and specific competencies. So, or there are a generalist service design, which is the most common, but some of them will say, why don't we have a more vertical? While the technical is more suggesting the fact that because we are experiencing the needs for specific challenges or specific topics that service design is dealing with, like we were saying that artificial intelligence is a big topic in this conference. For example, we need technical service design that are expert in new technologies, for example, or in ethical and critical design, or in speculative practice. So they need to specialize, is another perspective. Or technical means more around the implementation. So someone that is really able to bring the project to the end. We're talking about implementing, measuring, and so on. So this kind of considerations.
Exactly, and it also relates to differences between larger and smaller organizations. So in smaller organizations, you may need to be more general as a service designer, while in a larger organization, you can both, go upwards in the vertical, so to speak, or be more narrow. So that's also part of this equation here with the future stuff. To look at service designs, we need to figure out both people in small and large consultancies, in small and large service companies, etc. So they may develop differently depending on where they are.
Yes, thank you for sharing the details.
So is there any, I can see a post-it coming. Any comment, any further? Maybe I would say that people can still work around this frame and add their comments, while maybe we can start moving to the next topic.
Sure.
And I let JJ to introduce her, and you can tell me where to zoom.
Yes. So yeah, we can start with the global view first. Thank you. Sure. Once again, nice to meet you. I'm JJ from National University of Singapore. So my share here is perhaps the continuation from what Daniela and Stefan have discussed in terms of service design roles and identities, but expanding it to like what's happening in the other side of the world, the Singapore from Asia Pacific. The key question here, however, would be, I'd like us to think together how service design was adopted and demanded from particular markets from the first place, and how such has shaped the service design identities and job roles. So while I am sharing my observations from Singapore, I hope the audience could also compare my story with their own observations in their countries and organizations, and post their reflections observations and insights, and perhaps differences or similarities that they spot, and of course questions here in any part of the board here. So I want to share a bit of the story from Singapore. In Singapore, the adoption of service design have all started with design thinking, actually, not service design, adopted by non-design companies. So here, what I mean by non-design companies are those companies that did not have in-house design capability in the beginning. For example, like banks, government organizations, and hospitals, and so on. For example, the major bank in Singapore, DBS Bank, back in 2013, they started to adopt design thinking and human-centered design approaches, and they developed their own internal design-related framework called Journey Thinking Framework, which you can see here. And also they established in-house customer journey design team. So this is one of the examples. As you see here, while the terms like kind of service design related terms like customer journey, journey experience, journey thinking were popularly used, the term service design itself was not really used because there wasn't really awareness back then. And those key actors in such activities were rather called design facilitators or design innovators. But all these initiatives actually made the companies and the government organization to realize and focus on the demands for two capacities. One is the holistic understanding of user journey, the customer experience side, and another is someone who has a capability for organizational transformation, meaning someone who can build internal design capability. But these also led them the questions, then who they need to recruit, maybe not quite a industrial design graduate or marketing graduate. And what job titles should they create to do this job, right? So, and this demand was increasingly salient in the service sector companies, which is the main economic force in Singapore. And all these waves made the companies look into the emerging job role, which is a service designer. Yes, you can move into the second section. But however, a service designer as a job role was still new, and they didn't provide they were not able to provide a clearer understanding of the career pathway. So that resulted in multiple job roles by different companies in Singapore. So those same but different job roles include experienced designers, design researchers, design facilitator, business designers, and so on and so on. So to clarify this job role confusions and to provide a clearer career pathway, the Singapore government surveyed many design professionals and created a skills framework for design. So if you look into here, this is actually quite interactive platform. So you could actually visit and play, interact with the platform also. They categorized job roles, design related job roles, and the career pathway into 4 categories: business and design and innovation and technology. And as you can see here, thanks, Daniela. Service designer is actually located under innovation. And those job roles under design are more like conventional design roles like product designer, industrial designers, and visual communication designers. And on the business side, it was more about design management and design facilitator role. So what's interesting to look at here is actually the entry point for a service designer actually starts from design researcher or strategic designer. And those other job roles such as lead designer, design coach that was started from design facilitator, they can actually join the later movement of to become a service designers. So this kind of structure or the career pathway kind of indicate how Singapore organizations perceive the role and the position of a service design. So you can also look at detailed job descriptions and job skills there too. So from all these observations, while there are overlapping job responsibilities among these different job titles, and while the same job responsibilities are also called different names in different companies, we could actually identify some slight slightly different positioning across these roles. So this is, to my understanding, so we can map those different roles in the dimensions with strategic delivery, which indicates the design process, and also the customer orientation and the business orientation. So business designers could be more positioned to the strategic phase of the design process and towards the business, and design facilitator like similar. And the design researcher can be located more towards the strategic but customer end, whereas experienced designers could towards more for delivery and implementation, but quite customer end. And the service designer, in terms of my observations and how the skills framework describes service designer, seems to be located in actually in the middle. So their role is expected to translate both business requirements and the customer needs into the design solutions, which can actually inform the design brief in the strategic design level, but also the detailed touchpoint design and the concretization of the customer journey in the implementation of the service. So this will be my sharing. So in the board here, I would love to see the audience's observations and insights, whether you found any similarities or differences in the perception of a service designer and other same but different kind of job roles, and whether and share perhaps your insights on what then would make actually these differences. Is it the economy or the awareness of the design areas, or the education, or the market traits, or is there any confusions that you have encountered? And what are all these, the confusions, perhaps, or coexistence of multiple connotations and interchangeable use of the job titles would mean for the future of service designers? So I'd love to hear your thoughts and perhaps reflections on this topic. Thanks.
Thank you. So again, if there is any comment, you can write in the chat, or you can post it to the board, or raise your hands, so then we can give you the possibility to talk. I see a few people have joined the boards. Not sure. Yes, some comments are coming on the other one.
I see one question maybe related to JJ's talk in chat. So maybe we,
Yeah, sure. So the question from Debbie, the question is, how should an organization compare, if needed, between service design and customer experience? Okay, if needed. Okay, can you all see the question?
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's in the chat box.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. First of all, if needed, I think it's necessary, and I think it's also good to see that you addressed these two keywords, service design and customer experience. Like, if I understood your question correctly, okay, there have been actually confusions between service design and customer experience design and user experience design. But the key thing that could distinguish service design from user experience design is, as I have shared briefly in this the map, whereas design for customer experiences are really oriented to customers' experiences. So they design for customer experiences, and their work really centers around user research findings and like experience, the findings related to customer experiences. And the service design, I think, is actually in between the customer experience and the organizational needs. So service design not only looks at customer experience, but service designers are the ones who can align the customer experience with the organizational needs. So their roles are quite different. So the organizations need to be able to understand their different job roles from service designers and customer experience as well. So service designers are someone who can maybe bridge between UI UX designers and business designers, or those like management, marketing, like more like strategic people, who can kind of find the balance and who can align the customer needs and the organizational needs. Organizational needs in terms of business portfolio, business resource management, risk management, change management, and also organizational the service process and the human resource and so on. Hope this kind of address your question.
Maybe I can add another perspective on that, and I mean it's also from the title of the designers. If we have a customer experience designer, that assumes that there is a customer, that we view someone as a customer, so that defines the relationship between the organization and the customer. While a service designer, in the word service, we can interpret that in different ways, right? So we can think of service as a system of actors that all create something together in the end. So that's also a way of thinking about it, that in these names we can also see an assumption about relationships that the organization is doing. So services can be viewed as the co-creation of value, and then we look at all actors as co-creators rather than customers and providers. So that's another way of thinking about it.
More holistic perspective. Great, thanks a lot. I think again people can leave further comments on the post-its, but I think we can move to the next topic, which is
Daniela, there is a hand raised.
I don't see any of this, sorry. I don't know why I don't see chat, I don't see. Okay, so can we give the possibility to talk to the people with the raised hand?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, great. Okay, this is very interesting panel. My name is Kon Pyori. I'm the Dean of School of Design, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. As Sangiorgi and other people knows that we School of Design, Hong Kong Polytechnic University aimed to officially open up the service design department, both in undergraduate and master program. JJ that shared all the story about service design positioning in Singapore. You know, Singapore and Hong Kong is in many ways is quite similar in terms of size, in terms of population, in terms of particularly the industry structures. Hong Kong, we have more than 90% service industry, including banking and tourism and hospitality and retail and you name it, okay? But strangely in Hong Kong, we never had the service design department. But we used to have the social design program, okay? I think that JJ also compare all the similar that sub-discipline with service design. You can enlarge your map, okay? The positioning map, okay? But we do have a social design, I think quite similar, both of them. I'm not sure that how can I distinguish these? Service design and social design quite similar in a way, more system level of design, okay? It's not only one object or one touch point or something, it's a total system level. And also social design has really clear, strong methodology adopted with working with the community people and co-design and all those things, okay? So if any difference is that social design, as the name is said, you know, social design looks like a more NGO, the more non-profit or something, whereas service design is more or less that commercial company or those things. Other than that, I don't know that what can be a difference between social design and service design, because currently, by our plan, next year we'll still coexist with the service design and social design separately, although there will be many common subjects, okay? I want to hear that your point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the very interesting question. I think other panelists must have some like responses to that question as well, but I will perhaps start. I also acknowledge, thanks for addressing social design here. My talk was quite focusing on the business area, industry area, so I didn't include the social design aspect. But I also resonate with your view that the service design and social design are overlapping, but not the same. It shares the methodology and logic in terms of co-creation, participatory approach, and value co-creation and community engagement, and so on. But to me, and also like purely service designers and services approach can work on the social innovation, definitely, without any interest from the businesses. But I'm never an expert in social design, so like maybe the other panelists or the other the people from the audience can chime in and chip in. But to me, when it comes to social innovation, in collaboration with NGO and the third party and the grassroots community, there is this political agenda of a bit like activist approach. They are taking kind of outside in approach to create a really social transformation. So they are aiming to kind of envision together the alternative future scenarios for society and communities. And having said that, of course, service design has a shared similar view, but in general perception, I think service design has a more connotation with the business. So in that sense, they have different the finer value propositions and value goals, and the design space and the constraints are different, which are formed from the business needs than the social transformation. So that's kind of one difference that I could address.
Thank you. Any other view?
I agree with Jay, and then we need to move to the next frame. But yes, I think this presentation started, and also our research with Stefan and Patricia was very focused on design in organizations. So in that sense, the way designers define their identities is affected by the organizational context. But it's true that designers work also outside organization or in different kind of organizations, and the aim is not just profit or business transformation or new service innovation, but it's also about social change, social innovation, and the development of new co-creation of new solutions for the benefit of the public good and so on. So in that sense, the kind of competencies surely are different, and the kind of positioning map that that JJ built here could be different. So I think that maybe the focus could be more on if it's within for individual citizens or for more community, or is more kind of policy oriented toward more a kind of a social innovation projects, individual project or something like that. So it's about scaling, it's about the connection with more bottom up or more top down initiatives. But surely, yes, this is a panel that has been mostly focused on the organization view. Thanks a lot for joining. And just because I'm aware of time, and then we can go back to the questions and go deeper with the remaining time. So I ask you to give us an introduction to this other topic, which is the emergence of accreditation systems, which is partly related to this kind of service design skills frameworks. So the aim to try to define better what is service design, who are service design professionals. So Up to you.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. Okay, I would like to discuss different service design identities as reflected in different accreditation and qualification systems. So I here, just as an example, I brought 3 different qualification and accreditation systems or programs, or just definition. So first, I just briefly want to introduce Korean National Qualification Test for Service and Experience Design, which just started last year. And this this system this test demands 2 different, theoretical and practical knowledge from people who want to become a service designer in the future. And it covers, this knowledge covers 4 main topics, which is service experience design and planning, and user survey and analysis, and user-focused strategies, and service experience design development and management. So here, as you can see, it is now currently this service design perception through this qualification test is more related to designing service concept and service experience, and some technical aspect of service conducting service design. Second, I brought also Service Design Network accreditation program for service design professionals and masters. And this program actually demands 6 different knowledge and skills. And unlike the South Korean case, except for theoretical and practical knowledge, here we can see facilitation skills and training and consulting skills and engagement within the community. Especially here, training and consulting skills are very related to the designer's capability to support service implementation within organization, and by actually helping organizational staff actually pursue service innovation in the long term. So it is related to embedding service design skills and methodology, and also training organizational staff. And on the other hand, there is the role of service designer defined by gov.uk. This is not a very strict accreditation or qualification system, but they are broadly talking about skills required to become a service designer, which is agile working and communication and collaboration and facilitation, leadership guidance and prototyping and strategic thinking and user focus. And I really would like to invite all of you to add any other accreditation or qualifications that you know. And also, I'm very interested in hearing your opinions about pros and cons about this kind of accreditation and qualification system for service design. And actually, while looking into these different accreditation and qualification systems, as a service design researcher, I was really wondering how these different service design identities as reflected in these accreditation systems could be contextualized in evolving service design conceptualizations. And here I brought a very good overview of 3 different service design concepts, which is design of services, design for service, and service ecosystem design. And each of these perspectives really focus on different purpose, design material, and process and actor involvement about service design. And from the perspective of design of services, the main purpose of designer is to develop new service offerings, generally enabled by developing new touch points and interfaces. But from the design for service perspective, the main aim is to create the condition for emerging service experiences value in use. And here the design material is not just limited to physical touch point or interfaces, but extended to social material configuration. And from the service ecosystem design perspective, here, the design purpose would be to facilitate the emergence of desired form of value co-creation by shaping institutional arrangements and their physical enactments. So we probably could kind of position those different accreditation or qualification systems in this developing conceptualization of service design. And then by doing that, we may discover some commonalities and differences between different accreditation and qualification systems. And also we may be able to discover some gaps between those practical qualification system and this developing kind of discussion about conceptualization of service design. And then my last question is then, okay, by positioning those qualification system in this conceptualize different services and conceptualization, maybe then how could we further develop this kind of accreditation and qualification system if these things are necessary? And under this question, we might have to ask then, okay, then who should be called service designer? Because there could be really multiple opinions on that, even that. So for some people, they think, okay, designers and marketers can be called service designer. But for some people, maybe designers and marketers, but also organizational actors who are anyway involved in creating service experience, they can also be called service designer. And even there could be some people who think, okay, all actors in service ecosystems, they can become also service designer because they anyway contribute to shaping institutional arrangements to guide value co-creation. So I really look forward to hearing your opinion about this issue, accreditation system and qualification system. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, this is another topic. I don't know if anyone has been experiencing maybe some of these qualification tests, going through this, or learning about, or have any opinions about the role of these accreditation systems and how they could be developed. And in the meantime, I saw that the questions that were before, they disappeared from my board, so we can, in case we can go back to the initial questions.
So we've been answering a couple of the questions in the chat and also in the Q&A in writing.
Okay.
But please ask them again if you have more ideas on where to go.
No, but I don't see any more of the questions. So the question that I see that you gave an answer to one of the questions on the active role of the customer. But there was another question before that I don't see it anymore. So
Yeah, that was transferred to the chat, and then JJ gave an answer in writing.
Okay. So I was wondering, how is it about, I mean,
about 43 minutes has passed.
Maybe I can ask questions.
okay, yeah.
I think we kind of discussed about these topics before. As you nicely, really greatly explained that the service designer's role is expanding. It can be a designer, also it can be work with the marketers, also it can also work with the organization actors. So if the service designer can, their roles and their role can be expanded, also work with many other actors in a service ecosystem or the large organizations, then how can we actually distinguish service designers compared to the other, for example, job titles, for example, like marketers or the business planners or strategic planners, is also linked with the JJ's the diagrams, the framework. The service designer is actually in the middle, which means it looks like a service designer should actually facilitate, should also run a lot of the business side, also customer side, and they also need to understand about the ecosystem with the service delivery as well as the business values. But if we, so my question is, how can we, is our questions, how can we actually distinguish the service designer's role in the organizations or bigger ecosystem, or what could be challenges for the service designers?
Yeah, thank you, Shera. Actually, I don't have a clear answer for that, and that's why I'm really interested in hearing from the audience about this debate and the role of service designer. And I think actually, while the role of service designer is really expanding, I don't think just one person can do everything. So maybe there could be still, I don't know, a designer who are specified in, for example, working on physical touch point as a, for example, product designer or a graphic designer. And also there could be, you know, some people who more focus on facilitating role or some business related role. So the thing is, anyway, I think there could be so many different people who can be called a service designer, but just I don't know, maybe, but I in some country or in some context, there is some tendency to call just designers, only designers with some design background. I mean, there are some people who think that only people with design background or design related work experience can be called service designer. So I'm a little bit against that kind of opinion or that kind of perspective. So that's why I actually raised this issue and actually would like to hear from other people about this thing, along with this expanding conceptualization of service designer.
Stefan, you raised your hands.
Yeah, I would just like to add to Un's and agree that there is this, let's call it confusion between, you know, who is a service designer, who is not. And part of that maybe has to do with the idea that we need to be more specific and specialized. But, and as we were also saying in the beginning with the small interview study we were doing with Daniela and Lia Patricio, there is this still this forming of what service design is and those roles and how we actually try to figure out whether it's different from other design fields or not. But in a book that me and Katarina Wetter-Edman just wrote, we are distinguishing between, and it tags on to Un's comment now, we distinguish between knowledge-intensive design practice. We have that all over the place, right? All design fields have their knowledge-intensive design practice, and it's usually then based on having gone through a design university education or something like that. And then we have the layperson practices, where people that have other professions in their kind of basic training, maybe other design practices or design professions, but mainly that they have not been trained in thinking about either designing or service in their basic education, but they are picking up on this and trying to be part of a community of practice that today is called service design. So they become legitimate peripheral participants in that community of practice, and we call that lay person practice. And in Sweden we have a lot of really entry-level training of nurses, this is in public sector then, right? Nurses and administrative staff and etc. Because we believe that will make the development of the services they do even better in the end, if we have knowledge intensive design practice there. So there's also this distinction, right, between the knowledge intensive design practice and the layperson practice that we haven't quite sorted out yet in this arena.
Yeah, and I can add that this is connected to the fact that when using a Vink, as in the paper and the framework that you presented talks about service ecosystem design, the idea is a collective participation of different professionals in designing for the transformation ecosystem, but that doesn't mean that everyone are, let's say, service designers, but it's that designing is a collective action and that can be done by different professionals, by different competencies. So I think that the distinction is between designing versus designers, but I agree with also Stefan, this is the distinction between professionally trained or designers and people that do design in their daily life from an engineering perspective, from an IT perspective, from a marketing perspective, but still contributing to the service design. But surely the issue about the more we get into a generalist, the more you get into a more systemic perspective, the more it becomes difficult to say what is specific of service design, and we risk to follow into the generalist design thinking descriptions. So I think this discussion is also to keep our thinking in terms of the more become mature as a professional practice, the more it diversify, as we discussed with Stefan before. But the more we diversify, there is, like in Singapore, an attempt to try to clearly map these different professional identities. And someone tried to close them in boxes with accreditation systems just to be sure that there is a clear boundary, while other directions, is a kind of more multidisciplinary service design understanding. So again, this is still an open discussion. I don't see if there are any other questions or raising hands. Do you see any?
No, not right now.
I just want to see if there is any comments here on the other board. Similarity with cultural anthropology. Okay, so if at the moment there are no other questions, maybe we can go to the last board, and so that we can leave some space at the end for an open conversation. And this is more reflections on the implications for what we discussed for education and practice. And I leave the floor to Shera.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we had a great, interesting discussion earlier, and then now it's interesting topic how we can actually implement this kind of questions and then concerns or the discussion into the service design educations. So, for example, which new education pathway of service design should develop, or how can you actually integrate or upgrade the existing courses? So as you can see, the table in the left-hand side, it just summarized the 3 service design programs that offering in UK. Based on the subject they offer, we extracted key programs aims and under their curriculums. So, for example, ICA, they actually aim the developing the design researches as well as the developing new practices and then design process to develop the service, the solutions for the current and social and the business issues in both private and public sectors. And mainly it's based on the studio-based practices. And then likewise, the UAL, they offer the service design disciplines and aiming to broaden the students' understanding of the design innovation as a collaborative and also interdisciplinary design processes. And then it appears that the programs develop a range of the social and the business challenges through the live projects. So basically offering the partnership with the industry or the public sector so that students can actually learn from the real project, similar to the RCA. And the Glasgow's case, they allow the students to direct their studies towards to their own professional goals, and mainly aim to solve the complex social issues, social problems, focusing more social value, and also addressing the problem that may affect the people or society. It's very much research-driven kind of programs. So each programs commonly emphasize the area of service design in the practical skills, such as tools and methods, and then designing a service which drives the service and business innovations. So it also appears that they both integrate theoretical, also practical knowledge together. So this is the UK kind of case, which is quite mature in service design. So while this UK is quite mature in the service design educations, but the Hong Kong case is quite new. Service design is quite new and emerging subject. Although the almost like a 90% of a Hong Kong industry is related to service sector, such as hotel or tourism, transportations, or the financial service, and so on. However, the established education programs that are related to these service sectors are highly related to marketing, management, and businesses. And then it appears that the designs or designers' role in the service sector is more close to just user experience, UX design, or UI design, rather than the holistic approach of the design or the problem itself. So we just try to understand better then how service design demands, and then what other the education needs in Hong Kong. So initially we had a short survey with the design graduate students, design graduates who are mainly working in the design industry, such as design agencies or the corporate design teams, including the marketing team as well. And then there was some interesting needs identified. So the firstly, I can say is characteristic of program that they think is attracting. So they are interested in interdisciplinary programs, wish to build their new knowledge or through the integrating the multiple disciplinary in designs, also considering technology shift as well as the business requirements. They also highlight some, they want to engage with the more the complex project, not only experience design, but multi-level of the experience or the service experiences. And then secondly, they also mentioned that what kind of the usefulness in education pathway could useful for their career developments. And then they wish to have some kind of learning opportunities with the understanding of the digital transformations, such as the big data or AI, or some kind of the business kind of the level, more strategical level. And they also wanted to cultivate their professional attitude to the towards to the more multidisciplinary collaborations, not only working with the designers themselves, but working with the business planner, strategist, or the R&D. Some more collaboration they just interested in for their future careers. So lastly, the interesting thing is that they also empathize probably what could be the important skills or knowledges or experience for their current career or probably future career pathway. They also would like to equip with like a more advanced understanding of social issue, technical changes, and business understanding for the organizations, and then more the strategic, also the operational level of designs within the organizations. So they also highlight that it could be really useful if the courses have some the direct industry sponsored design project with the multiple disciplinary team settings. They want to actually explore what is the real practice in the world, rather than studying only, or rather than just only developing some kind of project. They want to work with the real stakeholders out there. So I think that this is quite important needs in the Hong Kong markets. And then I kind of wanted to discuss with them how we can implement these needs in new education programs or professional training programs, or whether it is essential to place the real world, real life industry partnerships, or more ethnographic or more in-depth research skills, or more business-oriented perspective, or some kind of the collaborative the leadership or the communication skills amongst the other stakeholders in organizations. So this is also open questions, how we can actually what is the perspective, and how can we actually adapt these needs into the education programs, especially in Asia markets. Yeah. Any questions?
Okay, so we have already some comments here on the board. And one of these is, do we need a degree in service design, or would a broader, more inclusive degree be better? Or is the market ready to hire service design graduates? I imagine that this is referring to Hong Kong, probably. And I don't know if this is the...
I think I lost the questions here.
Can you see my screen?
It's
Yeah,
in the board. Yeah.
Yeah, do we need that design for the more inclusive design better? And market ready. I think it's two different questions. The market-wise, it is still very the emerging, very new in Hong Kong. But it is, we also need to the educate publics about the value of service designs, as well as also promote that how the service design can be differentiated with the other existing disciplines. And then also like keep referring to the JJ's the diagrams, the framework. The service designs is in the middle, which requires that the more broader understanding of a more business side, organization side, also the customers experience and the business organizations the needs. So it's more like the holistic understanding of the organization or some challenges. So I think it is especially in Hong Kong, where a lot of the markets are driven by service sector. Probably it could be useful to cultivate the new students who can have at least a better understanding of this differentiation, also some needs of the market shift at least. So am I answer?
Yeah, I can add that on our experience, even if the market maybe is not completely ready, it's something that develops. The more you start creating an offer, then gradually you facilitate the sharing of knowledge with project experience with the university and so on, but also the graduates themselves become the lever to facilitate the knowledge and create the awareness within organizations, maybe starting from a door and then developing a completely different roles because they are appreciated for what they bring. So, so I think that's the process of developing awareness comes from different directions. So there is a more university-led, but there are also design studios that maybe develop that specific competence and trying to promote with their clients that service design, but also designers start to enter, again, maybe from different profiles, because there is not still the culture around defining, opening service design positions. But as we saw with the interviews, in our case, with Stefan and Leah, they gradually build their visibility in the company start recognizing, and then maybe they gain a wider perspective. And they are the one educating organizations to understand what they can bring, no? So I wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't worry about the market is ready or not. If you're starting to think about it, I think that means there is a readiness in that sense. And the broader than service design, I don't know what it is in terms of education. We were actually saying that we need more specialization, more technical knowledge, because service design, the education tends to be generalist, tend to be very broad in terms of understanding service innovation. And so I wouldn't say that we need a broader, maybe we need actually training pathways that provide a specific perspective on service design, just to qualify or differentiate. But I wouldn't see broader than service design. I mean, is quite general open. So I see that Stefan and JJ has raised their hands. Who wants to go first?
Okay. Okay. Maybe so relate to that, I might want to add one more question. Would service design be a fad? You know, from the research community, you know, we see there are actually still a lot of room for service design to grow, because we recognize still the limitation or shortage of methodologies and definitions, theories, and so on and so on. So it's still like very, very much growing. But in terms of students' employability and also the fast changing trends where the companies are kind of, you know, chasing after, service design might be also a fad. It might be just trendy concept for several years. So those the degree holders, the service design degree holders, so sometime later, whether those specific degree will kind of narrow down the job opportunity for those graduates. That's actually also the ongoing debate here in our university, whether we want to, by seeing the like increasing demand of service design, but at the same time, there is concern that the longevity of service design in terms of the students' employability and the market readiness.
Yeah, and I share that it's a worry I have actually, that if we design our service design programs too tightly towards one of the, if we think about this, the different kinds of practices, designing of service, designing for service, and designing the ecosystem service design here, right? If we create our programs just tailored to one of those, we will actually also form what kinds of jobs these students will have. And from my point of view, I mean, in Sweden, we don't have a service design program, mainly because the places where you become a service designer, we all decided that we should have a design program, and then we make sure that students can become service designers if they want to. We have, you know, courses and support to do that, and some of them are also marketed as, some of them as service design programs, and some of them as interaction design programs, etc., etc. So there is this possibility within these more general kind of structures to become designers within the kind of setting that you would like to. And I mean, my worry with creating service design programs is partly that we don't yet know what it will become, right? And as soon as we tighten them up. We will also form, like Daniela was saying, form the market to hire those and put that label then on those kinds of designers. And then we need to invent new things and new names for the other kinds of ways of approaching service design. So we have to have service systems designers, and we need, you know, ecosystem service designers or whatever. And I'm kind of worried about this sometimes, at least about this putting tags on things all the time, because in many ways it's design that we are helping people to develop, and we are meeting things that are happening in the transitions in the world right now. And also another part of that is probably that design is in a transition from a space, from the 20th century kind of gaze on design to another way of thinking about what design does to our society and what the society does to design, with more social entrepreneurship, with more community-based development, etc., and less, not necessarily less, but as much maybe market-driven, etc. So we're in kind of a transition there, and we're trying to form things. So from my point of view, it would be better to keep a little bit of an open end. We can call it service design, but then we need to make sure that it actually encompasses quite a few things, systems, ways of thinking, not only designing the interfaces of the services.
Thank you, Stefan. And I don't know if there are any other. I see there was a question, but I'm not very sure what does it mean.
We could ask the if it's the X factor question you're thinking of.
Yeah, the X factor that service design brings.
So we could ask
the X factor?
Yeah, we could ask the person to actually ask the question more. Maybe we can open up for that person to ask the question and explain what is meant.
He's anonymous, so that's not. What is Sandra Gabriele? What is special, different about service design?
And Ida raised her hand.
Okay, please
Hi,
give
everyone. Good morning from London. Nice to see you all. Yeah, I think in parts the question has been answered. I guess I was just curious to hear your thoughts and other people who are developing service design programs around the world. So that's kind of some of the questions and dilemmas that we had as well with developing our program. It's kind of like, how open-ended do you design it? Obviously, you want to be connecting it to the industry and understanding how the different roles are going to prepare students for the roles that will make them recruitable and, you know, be ready for the industry experience. But on the other hand, you want to also have that macro and ecosystem level thinking, and you want to be able to inspire them to disrupt service design practice, and you want them to teach them how to navigate uncertainty, especially in socioeconomic transformations in many different ways. So it's kind of like, how do you create that balance between providing that macro level systemic thinking, but then also equipping them with tools that makes them, you know, ready for the market? Because I think when they start working, I think a lot of those design tools and methods get picked up along the way through the different projects in many different ways. But on the other hand, they can't also be unaware of how to use the tools in different projects and industry collaborations. But then from our view, the way we've positioned the program is very much from a strategic innovation perspective. So developing the skills to think critically, analytically, and also really understand the role that service design can play in different, you know, from public, private, tertiary sectors, etc. So yeah, where do we draw the line? And is perhaps the best way forward a combination of these approaches? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I can jump in. I think that hi, Ida. Thanks for the question. So, on my perspective, I think that this, like you say, the strategy, the critical thinking, the wider perspective is still fundamental, and it is what actually is valued, extremely valued in our students, because they bring that that more holistic, more critical view within companies that are more maybe used to have more siloed, more technical view on innovation. So I think that kind of wider thinking attitude is fundamental to be cultivated. But at the same time, also by interviewing these designers, but also listening to organizations, I think that we need to upgrade the service design skills and knowledge. So we can't anymore avoid to deal with the technology and the implications around it, the critical challenges around environmental crisis, or understanding more practical or project management skills where they develop more higher role. So it's true that the container of a master is limited, so you can't just put too much. But some attention to the very fundamental issues and topics that in the future, more now and also increasingly in the future, designers will need to know, at least to navigate, being able to navigate. I think that should be gradually introduced. I don't know how the others have other opinions of that.
Should we talk about X factor? I think it also, in a way, ties with another latest question, like one sentence definition of service design from the panel, if such a thing is possible.
I was seeing that Stefan was writing, so I was hoping that he was giving the,
yeah, he can present our views.
yeah. So
my answer was going to be there are at least 5 one-sentence definitions of service design in the panel.
Yeah, I mean,
it's still forming, right? It may be different, depends on, not necessarily the panel, right? But we have many different ways of approaching what service is, which means that we will have different ways of understanding, making that one sentence definition. And even if we say the same thing, depending on how we understand service, and of course how we understand design and designing and the designer, the actual definition will mean different things, which is also, at least from the academic point of view, right?
But generally, when we present design, service design in a very simple way, we say it's a human-centered, it's a creative, it's an iterative, experimental approach to service innovation. That is a very generic perspective. I try to bring all the key qualities around that design brings to service innovation process. So it's a collaborative as well approach to service innovation. Of course, the X factor, what could be the X factor of service design?
So I wrote an answer in the chat, and I mean, from my point of view, it's how service design helps in transforming organizations from production oriented and market oriented to collaborative and systems oriented. Co-creation, basically going from the simple kind of relationship on the market and the production system that is creating something for a market, and service design is helping organizations to transform, and that is the X factor of service design as compared to other design fields, at least. Then of course there are other fields that are doing the same thing, right, in the service area, but within design, I guess it's service design that is trying to do that.
I could continue. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Just I'm aware that this is
the same.
7:50, and I don't know.
People are leaving.
Yeah.
I didn't see any time management. So
yeah, it's 50. Yeah.
Sorry, we will have to close the session. I wrote you a few times in chat. I'm not sure if you see
but I don't see any chat. I don't see any chat. I
Okay,
don't know why.
then that
I'm
was the
sorry.
problem. Okay, maybe if you have one more minute, but then we have to close the session because there's other ones coming up. Sorry.
Okay. JJ, did you want to make a final comment?
Okay. Okay. Final comment. Okay. The X factor for service design to me is really the identification of the new stakeholders and create the new collaborative network. So in that sense, the one sentence definition of service design would be, it's a logic for value co-creation, not a tool. So it's a one sentence definition. I don't want this to be a final comment. Please,
No.
please jump in.
Okay, so thanks everyone for the contributions. I'm sorry that I couldn't see all the now that I'm back here without sharing the screen, I can see all the comments that I couldn't see before. So I missed out a bit of few things. But I think we touched upon many interesting conversations and many issues that both mature service design, let's say, a bit more with some years behind, and emerging ones still have these questions. So it would be nice to keep the conversation open. So thanks everyone, and the board is there, and we will look at if there is any new further feedback, and good continuation with the conference.
Thank you, Daniela, for facilitating.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.